Okay, so once again, due to my poor video editing, creating, splicing, that kind of stuff, I couldn't think of a nice special intro to do for this one, so we're just going to talk about it. So essentially, this episode is going to be about coaching and management in esports. Um, what the roles should the coach and management be in esports, how they should affect the teams in esports, that type of thing. Um, and it's more than just the teams; it's also individual players on the teams. So some of the top three cases for this kind of stuff in League, at least, is um, Leduc stepping down from Origin, Chris stepping down from LGD, and Reggie stepping in on TSM. Um, Other than that, there's other things like in CS:GO where coaches and management are still kind of new. They haven't really caught the ground for it yet. Neither is League, really, but they're still trying to figure it out, and they're at least implementing it. As far as I know, CS:GO is still new at trying things like coaches and that kind of thing. And for the most part, I think most CS:GO teams are still not in gaming houses, if I'm correct. I know CLG is in a gaming house. I think Cloud9 is in a gaming house together. Maybe TSM, and I don't know about any other ones like this. I'm pretty sure the bigger organizations are all in gaming houses, but I don't think the smaller ones are. I know that was like a big thing CS:GO was trying to get into also that nobody really wanted at the time. But that's a different topic. So essentially with okay, so basically coaching in League has been a thing that Western teams have still been trying to get a grasp on. Not many teams or organizations are really sure what is good for their players and what is good for their scene per se, because a lot of coaches in Korea are you could name that are like super good. Like Koma is pretty good. He's been around esports forever. I wish I could name more, but you actually can see the results from those coaches. In League, it's not like I feel like the coach is highly underrated, especially um, only because most people watch the game and they see a bunch of other things happening that they think that could not just be happening or could not have been like set up anyway. So it's like it's not like something the coach could have an input on, and I think that's entirely wrong. I think just about in every game something happens that shows coach is implementations. There we go. I think the biggest factor of that one is the way CLG plays the early game and their rotation game. I think a lot of that came from when they had Monte Cristo as a coach, and been a little more refined now because they've known it, but they didn't have like the team structure or the management structure to actually be able to be a coherent team and put that into place in the games, which is what you see now. Um, in the case of all right, so we'll start with Origin and LGD because these are both very similar cases. And this is going to come up as an issue in TSM as well. And earlier versions of CLG when they had Monte Cristo as a remote coach and he couldn't really do a lot of things when he wasn't in house. And Scara was the coach. Scara wasn't really a coach up front. He was more of like a backup, kind of listened more to the players and what they wanted to say and kind of lead the players into their own beliefs, which isn't like a bad thing. But I think on certain teams, it is required to be able to take charge and have the final say on things. So a good example of these ones would be I don't want to say Cloud9 because No Lemon Nation did a lot of that, and I don't know how much Charlie did. But basically, a good representation of that would be like SKT. I think SKT and many of the Korean teams as well have a very strict coaching structure where the coach basically has the final say. Although you could probably say SKT is maybe an outlier, only because Faker is on that team. When you have a player like Faker, who's literally the best player in the game, and might ever, it could be the best player ever to play the game. Um, you get an outlier where he may or may not, like, if you're a coach and you're coaching literally the best player in the game, you might have some leeway on what that player wants to play into a certain matchup. That's also a discussion that came up a lot, or that's been coming up a lot when you have Western teams trying to figure out the balance between coach and players. And that's because a lot of the times they're going for coaches that are ex players or something like that, like Loco Doco or Bubba Dub now for Cloud9 and Scara, what Scara did for CLG. And what that does is it maybe unintentionally gives like a very player focused uh, team or style or management, that kind of thing. Where if you have people like on Origin per se with Leduc, and why he stepped down was because he didn't think he had enough authority. He found a lot of frustration in it, and it's because the owner of the team is on the team. So in those kind of situations, it's almost like having the outlier Faker, when Faker probably knows better than most of the people that play the game, and then you have Leduc coaching Origin and Expeke being on the team, who's also the owner. And it's kind of like it's a weird balance of trying to control your coach or control your boss, I should say. So you can see where the frustration would come in with that when he's trying to implement these other things, and you have Expeke probably saying these other things, and then finding weird ways to have to say things to that specific player. Um, Especially if the player has like an ego, like what we saw with TSM and how what was apparently happening with Lokodoko and Bjergsen. When you have, and I think TSM is a very good example of that too, because they have Bjergsen on the team who is literally like a 1v9 carry more than half of the time. And that's very shown in a lot of their games. And then you have times when what we saw in TSM Legends was Lokodoko trying to say this champion would be better for this comp, but Bjergsen was trying to say no. I think if we can poke it, even though it probably didn't fit right, and I think he later admitted saying that in later in the episode or something like that. Um, he picked Ezreal over Orianna anyway in a comp that highly favored having Orianna rather than the Ezreal in the mid lane. And that's the kind of thing where coaches have to try and find a way to not shut down an ego of a player, because you don't want to entirely shut down the ego, because you want to have it kind of there when they're trying to dumpster the other enemy laner, especially if it's in the mid lane when it's most impact and you know that this player is the carry. You want him to have somewhat of an ego so that he has the confidence to go on to the rift and just absolutely crush the enemy laner. And you saw that's basically what Bjergsen did to Incarnation in the very first game of Summer LCS. He was like 100 CS over the game, and yet they still lost. Um, so basically, in terms of Leduc and Chris, with the management not giving the coach enough authority per se, so like there's a lot of ways that people can coach, and there's not many ways that are known to fit everybody yet. So like there's no one way of coaching that will work with every team as of right now. A lot of the Western teams use somewhat of a player focused democracy type of coaching, whereas in Korea, obviously they have like the respect kind of stuff where they have like the tiers of social class where it's like elders, wealthy or whatever it is, and then you're just down here just from being younger than them. So the respect factor comes in, which is why a lot of the LCK coaches are older than the players. That's just one of the things where they practically respect them anyway. It doesn't matter who they are as a person, as a player themselves, that kind of thing. So the reason that doesn't work in Western culture is because the culture is different. That kind of respect isn't. It's not. All right. I'll just say it's not really there in Western culture. So, like, yes, there's still the thing of respect your elders, that kind of stuff, but not. It's very known that not everybody does that. That's just how things are. Everybody in the Western cultures have some sort of ego. They want to do things on their own. They want to build themselves up, right? It's not just like helping this guy or respecting this guy. It's like, especially in America, it's all about building your own business. That's like one of the main things of the American dream and that kind of thing. In Europe, it's a little different, but with Leduc and Origin, like I said, Expeke being the actual owner of the team, it's hard for Leduc to actually implement things that he would want as a coach when you're trying to coach your boss. It's like if you do one thing wrong, it's you could be fired or let off or that kind of thing. Um, I'm pretty sure it was the same in terms of Chris from LGD. He was also the coach for Royal Club in season 3 and 4 and brought them to the finals of Worlds twice, 2 times in a row. He also just left LGD. I want to say they're around the same time as Leduc or recently. It's before Worlds regardless. Due to not being able to, or it was something along the lines of not having enough authority in the team, and then a lot. He brought up a lot of things about the payment of the organization and the way the management works and that kind of thing. Um, so there were specific other issues along with him that he brought up in his own like Weibo, I think it is. That's the Chinese like Twitter, Twitter, whatever the fuck it is. He wrote this whole thing criticizing the organization, the I think some of the players, some of the management, how they did all this other stuff. Um, Whereas Leduc just kind of said, "I think they're a great team. It's just I want to find a team where I can be more authoritative in the structure of how it's made and that kind of thing." So already, just between Western and Asian coaches, you can see the difference already. Like it's huge. So one of them. All right. Well, actually, it might not be that big of a difference. I'm pretty sure what happened with Chris was I think something happened where like he got drunk that one night or whatever, and then basically went off. Um, which is something you never want to do if you want to try and find another org again, because nobody's gonna hire you if they're afraid you're gonna do that. But Leduc was known for as a decent coach, and he brought Origin to Worlds basically, and then he stepped down to attempt to not hinder their performance. And I think Chris was doing a little less of that. I don't think he thought he would have hindered their performance at Worlds. I think he was just kind of fed up with how the management worked. And that kind of leads into the next area of with TSM and how Reggie was kind of fed up with how Loco was coaching. But the thing with TSM is I don't like how they're doing the whole coaching system, especially when Loco doesn't have full authority over the players. Sure, that can work with some teams, but I don't see how it will work in comparison to some other team that does have full authority. So basically, what Reggie did when he stepped in is he dropped the bomb. That was it. Like once that happened, Loco had no authority over any of the players anymore. Like that was it. There's no way. There's no way Loco's getting any of that authority back. I actually don't think Loco's going to be staying with TSM after Worlds. That's just me. I'm not sure. But what that does is that really hinders a coach's performance. So instead of just hindering like a team performance in game, this actually hinders the coach's performance to actually help the team because the coach has no respect or authority over the players at all. What Reggie did was it was good to a point, but he could have done it differently. Like it's good if things are starting to go wrong, it's good that management has to step in and actually help the coach and lead them on that kind of thing. But it's not good to the point of if you want to keep Loco as a coach, you're practically ruining it like entirely. Like, you're ruining his chances of actually helping the team and pulling them out of the slump that they were in. I don't even think he really pulled them out of the slump at all. They were still just the same. They might have given Dyrus a few carry champions, but they made it past Gravity, which was 3-1, which is all right. It was Gravity. Made it through Liquid 3-1, which is a little more impressive, and then they got 3-0'd by CLG in the finals. So it's almost like nothing really improved. So in terms of that style of coaching and with the management being involved, I think it's good. But like I said, I think it's good to a certain point. I know on the recent one they were doing a thing with talking to Dyrus about why he wasn't performing very well, and they think just because he's going to retire, that's going to be that. They don't think he's actually putting in his best effort. It's good that he actually included Loco in that conversation as well. But the thing is, he's still not. So all right. So let's go over real quick about the coach's job on a team. So basically, the coach is there not to help the team per se. The coach is there to make sure that the team performs better in the game. So basically, if as long as the coach can, um, oh God, what's the word? Circulate discussion and make sure everybody's talking, everyone's putting in their input so that he can help each individual player, and make sure that players aren't getting like demotivated or anything like that, and making sure that players are playing to their highest potential. Because if they're not, then there's going to be an issue, and you won't actually like unless it's very visible that this player is not playing to his peak, like Wild Turtle was at a certain point, and Dyrus was as well in the beginning of the summer split. Then it becomes very difficult to tell where the issue lie. It could lie in the player, it could lie in the coach, and then it becomes very difficult to decide which one to try and fix first. So with a coach in the team, you want the coach to be able to, like I said, circulate discussion, make sure the players are doing what they need to do, and make sure that the coach can, especially if the coach is involved in planning, especially in league with like picks and bans and that kind of stuff. If they're involved in like the strategic analyzing of the game and the planning through the game and the structure of how the game should go and what kind of game plan you're having, you want the coach to have some sort of authority over the players so that they can make sure that the players are playing the right champions that'll work for that team comp. Because if they can't and the players just randomly go off and play whatever they want to play, you're gonna have an issue because you can't grab them. You can't get a hold of the players. You can't just like take them by the arm and just say, "Sit down, boy. You're playing Oriana this game." That's what I like to hear. Acceptance. You won't get that. And I think that's actually a really big issue. When it comes to teams, especially if you don't have that good of a structure, like a management structure in the first place, then that becomes a huge issue because if the management can't help the team and the coach can't help the team is pretty much fending for themselves. So if anything happens like internally, the team is fucked. Like it's game over. The team is over. They're not going to win anything. Um. Oh God, I forgot where I was going to go just now. I lost it entirely. Oh, and so when you have management like Reggie stepping in like that, it's okay. Like I said, to a point. Again, it just depends on how you handle it. I never thought Reggie was the type of person that'd be able to handle that well in the first place, and he didn't really. Honestly, he didn't handle it that great. Um, but one of the plus sides from coaching, when you try to change things up from how everyone else is doing it with like internal players and that kind of thing, CLG does it with double coaching style when they have a strategic analyst in Zixlaw where or Tony, where he is on stage, he goes over picks and bans, he analyzes the game, he does all this other stuff, and then you have Coach Chris. And Coach Chris basically keeps team morale up, make sure the team is okay together, they do whatever. He makes sure that the players are active so that they're mentally they're still doing things. I know TSM probably does something like that as well, where the players go to the gym, but I don't think it's like a training regimen, kind of like what CLG has. But I think that kind of stuff is great in a team, especially in esports like League of Legends, where um, reaction time is very key. Like you need to be able to react, otherwise, like you're not going to be able to do well. Like if Turtle can't constantly flash Malphite ults like he did in that one game, if Malphite suddenly becomes meta again, ooh, like right now, right before Worlds in the group of death, he's probably going to die. That's just how it is. I also think that the coach should be involved in team discussion during the game. Now there's two sides to this. There's a plus side and there's obviously the bad side. So the plus side is that if the coach is constantly involved, there's a chance that the players will just automatically be talking about what they could be doing in the game, and then they just get used to being able to take a lead and then just roll with it, or come from behind and roll with it, make the comeback, do whatever they need to do. However, the bad side to the coach being involved in scrims and the discussion in the team during the game is that it's a weird balance. So if the coach is talking too much in that kind of situation, when it comes to the real game, the players may not know what to talk about because there's this huge void because the coach is not on stage being able to talk with them. So there's this huge void of conversation, and people are quiet, and you never want that in the game. Never want people to be quiet about what's going on in the game. That is the worst thing that could possibly happen. When people aren't communicating, things will just go wrong almost instantly, and that's just something you never want. So obviously that would be the downside to that. It has both a very high upside and a very low downside, because you don't want players, like you don't want that void to exist, but you also want to make sure that you can keep the players talking at the highest high of the game. Um, so it's a weird topic to continue talking about right now. I think it's one of the bigger things going around the scene. Is coaches and management and that kind of stuff in esports. What just that? Terrifying. All right, I could have sworn something grabbed my pocket. Spooky. Oh God, where was I? Oh, okay. But I think certain teams, and especially certain Western teams, are starting to figure it out, like Fnatic and CLG. Um, Cloud9 could have had it, but they dropped the ball when they were so far ahead of anyone in the first place that they didn't upgrade their coaching staff in time. So I honestly, I think the only Western teams that are doing a good job with the coaching and like the staff of the team in general is probably CLG and Fnatic, and it showed in their games. Honestly, Daylor was a fantastic coach. I'd say Daylor is probably the best Western coach right now. Um, and it's hard to judge CLG's coach Chris, because there's two coaches going on with Zix and Tim doing two different things to make one decent team of coaching. And then obviously you have the Korean way of doing it, where you have like Koma on SKT doing a bunch of things for the team, where he has this whole regimen of waking them up early and this kind of stuff. And then a bunch of the other Korean and Chinese teams, where they have these whole other way of doing things that most Western teams probably don't know, because it's not out in the public. It's just something you have to figure out what's going on. And I think Western teams are getting there. I think Western teams by 2016, I think most Western teams will have a decent coaching staff. And I think the coaching staff of Fnatic and CLG will carry them through 2016, still being ahead of the pack, just because of how quickly they adapted to the changing coaching staff of the teams. Um, I don't think Western teams are that far off from Asian teams anymore. This Worlds is going to be a lot closer than the past few have been, especially when in terms of NA and EU and that kind of thing. You have Fnatic and CLG doing pretty decent. Cloud9 made a decent run through the gauntlet, although without knowing how their Diamond 2 top laner has been doing, it's a worrying trend, you could say. We'll never know. That's like the scrim results and stuff that they don't release, obviously for reasons that you just don't want to release scrim results. Um, honestly, I think Group D will be a good determiner. Determiner. That's not a word. It'll be a good reflection of how close the four major regions of China, Korea, EU, and NA are, because you have TSM, LGD, OG, and KT. So you have arguably the best Chinese team, arguably the second best Korean team, second best NA team, and the second best EU team. So all these teams are fairly close. It pretty much just comes down to structure. Honestly, I think this is called the group of death, but I actually think anything could happen in this group. Um, I mean, I think it's likely that TSM and OG won't be getting out of groups. Um, but depending on how the boot camps go and how teams adapt and how the structure of the teams go, I don't think as of right now it's likely to say that they won't win. They won't be able to take a game off LGD or KT. I think that's possible as of right now. But we will definitely know come the first day, I think, of play. Where's Let me see something really quickly. Oh, did this go away? What happened? Is that broken? What happened? Let me see who plays on the first day real quick. I don't think anybody from Group D is playing on the first day. Yeah, okay. So nobody in Group D plays on the first day. I think they start on the second day. Um, but I still think after the first, maybe the second day, I guess after day two of Worlds, we'll know where the teams generally are, um, in terms of how they adapted and stuff. By then, I know. All right, so TSM versus KT is the first game of day two, and Fnatic versus IG is the first game of day one. And then throughout the day, you have day one kind of sucks. Holy shit! All right, so day one's not that exciting. So day two will probably be a good indicator, right? Right? No. The only two exciting games from day two is LGD versus Origin and KT versus TSM. The only exciting thing from day one is Fnatic versus IG. That kind of sucks. What's day three? Day three is EDG versus SKT, LGD versus KT, OG versus TSM, IG versus Cloud9, and AHQ versus Fnatic. This day is chock full of shit. Oh, fantastic games. And then in the middle of it, you have H2K versus Bangkok Titans. Oh man, that's gonna be a shithole. Uh, and then day four is TSM versus LGD, KT versus OG, IG versus HQ, Cloud9 versus Fnatic, CLG versus Q Tigers, and Flash Wolves versus Pain is the last game. So that's a pretty decent day, also, actually. So the first 4 days, the first week should be a good tell of how the teams did, um, in adapting in their boot camps and being able to tell what's good and what's not, how to ban properly against certain teams. All that stuff will be a good indicator of how well coaching staffs and that kind of thing adapted, because it's not gonna come down to the players. I guarantee it. Guarantee a lot of this adaptation is not going to come down to the players. It's going to come down to coaches watching the players in solo queue, players telling the coaches what's been played, what's been good, and the coaches having the analysts check out what the other teams have been playing and the other players that have been playing in solo queue, that kind of thing. So I think it's going to come down to how good of a coaching staff you have. So if you have a coaching staff that has a good life coach, good analyst or two, maybe even two analysts would be good. a good scouter who can like watch other players and that kind of thing and give the information to the analysts and the coach. I think those teams will end up doing better in the group stage than the rest of the teams, regardless of region and regardless of actual skill in the players. Um, because if they're this can't happen in groups, so I guess it wouldn't make sense. What would be a good example of this? Fuck it. So let's say CLG versus Pain. I think is the first day. Oop. Oh, CLG versus Flash Wolves. All right, fuck that. Day two. CLG versus Pain. Day two. Last game of the day. So say Pain in Brazil suddenly has this great infrastructure of their team. They have a great coach, analyst. They know exactly what CLG is going to play. CLG, they watch Pain. They see a few things. They missed some stuff because they weren't paying attention too well. They were focused on Coup Tigers and Flash Wolves. They just kind of brushed them over. Pain could probably take that game over CLG. They'll know what to ban. They'll know what CLG plays. They know how to counter it. That kind of stuff. So I honestly think, regardless of skill, regardless of region, it all comes down to the infrastructure of the team and the coaching staff implemented. That's going to allow teams to really shine in these group stages, and I think we'll see that in the first week. So I'm super hyped for Worlds. Super excited to see how this stuff goes. But that's my input of how coaches and management in esports affects the teams and the overall placements of these type of games or games. The overall placements of teams and how well they will do at Worlds.